I was driving past my son in law's house that Tuesday afternoon, thinking I'd surprise him with tickets to the baseball game. Dan had been part of our family for 3 years now, married to my daughter Brianna, and despite being a lawyer with champagne tastes, he seemed to make her happy. That was enough for me. But when I turned the corner and saw my wife Margaret's silver Lexus park in the driveway, my chest tightened with an unexplainable dread. That car should have been in our garage or at the country club where Margaret spent her Tuesday afternoons playing bridge with her circle of wealthy friends. Something felt wrong, really wrong. I pulled over 3 houses down and killed the engine. My hands were already trembling as I gripped the steering wheel. 25 years of marriage had taught me to trust my instincts about Margaret, and right now, every instinct was screaming that I was about to discover something terrible. I approached the house quietly, my work boots silent on the grass. The living room window was cracked open, probably to let in the spring breeze. Through that small gap, I could hear voices carrying clearly in the afternoon stillness. When the old fool finally signs the papers, we'll have everything we planned. For that was Margaret's voice. My Margaret, the woman I'd loved for a quarter century, the woman I'd built an empire for, calling me an old fool. My legs nearly gave out. I pressed myself against the brick wall, forcing myself to listen, to understand what was happening inside that room. The timeline's perfect. Din's voice responded, crisp and professional, like he was discussing a business merger instead of whatever this was. File in June. Claim irreconcilable differences. With the new state laws, Margaret's entitled to half of everything acquired during marriage, plus lifetime spousal support. Margaret laughed, that same tinkling laugh that had captured my heart at the Morrison Christmas party 25 years ago. Now it sounded like breaking glass. The construction business alone is worth $12 million, she said. Add the rental properties, the vacation home in Wisconsin, the investment portfolio. We're looking at nearly 20 million total. 20 million. She calculated my worth down to the dollar. The business I'd built from nothing, starting with one borrowed truck and a toolbox my father left me. The empire I'd created with 16-hour days in countless sacrifices. She'd reduced it all to a number. My hand fumbled for my phone. With shaking fingers, I opened the recording app and held it near the window gap. Whatever was happening in that room, I needed proof, not just for legal reasons, but because part of me still couldn't believe this was real. The beautiful part is his trusting nature, Dan continued. Alan has no idea we've been documenting his assets for months. Bank statements, property deeds, business valuations, everything's already copied and cataloged. There was a rustling of papers. Through the curtain gap, I could see Dan holding up a thick manila folder. He practically handed us the keys to his kingdom. Dan said with satisfaction. 2 years of playing the devoted wife. Margaret sighed dramatically, pretending to care about his boring construction stories, acting interested when he talks about concrete grades and building codes, nodding sympathetically when he worries about making payroll for his workers. God, the man actually believes I love him. Those words hit me like a physical blow. I pressed my back against the wall, struggling to breathe quietly. 2 years. She'd been pretending for 2 years. Every kiss, every I love you, every intimate moment, all of it had been an act. But wait, 2 years ago was when I landed the Morrison Municipal Center contract, the $50 million project that transformed Call Construction from a successful local business into a regional powerhouse. The timing wasn't coincidental. Remember, Dan's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. The key is making him think the divorce is his failure. We need him feeling guilty enough to be generous in the settlement. Men like Alan, with their working class honor codes, they'd rather lose money than lose face. Oh, I know exactly how to handle him, Margaret replied. 25 years of marriage taught me all his weaknesses. His ridiculous pride in being a good provider. His need to be seen as the strong, reliable one. His pathetic, desperate need for affection that his mother never gave him. She knew about my mother. I told her that in confidence. crying in her arms after Mom's funeral. How Mom had been too broken by Dad's death to show affection to her kids. How I'd spent my whole life trying to earn love through hard work and providing for others. Margaret had held me that night, promising she'd never leave me feeling unloved again. Another lie. Another performance. By September, you'll be divorced, wealthy, and free to do whatever you want, Dan said. There was something in his tone, something beyond professional satisfaction with whoever you want. The pause that followed was heavy with meaning. Through the curtain, I saw their shadows move closer together. Dan, Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper. We have to be careful. If Brianna found out, she won't. Your daughter thinks I hung the moon. Besides, she's so focused on her psychology practice. She barely notices what happens at home. And Alan, well, Alan only sees what he wants to see. My phone captured every word. But my mind was struggling to process the full scope of their betrayal, not just the money, not just the divorce planning. They were having an affair. My wife and my daughter's husband, poor Brianna, my sweet, brilliant daughter who'd inherited my trusting nature along with her mother's green eyes. She was going to be destroyed by this. A twig snapped under my foot as I shifted position. Both voices inside stopped mid-conversation. Did you hear something? Margaret asked, tension creeping into her voice. Probably just the neighbor's cat. Dan replied after a pause. You're getting paranoid. Can you blame me? If Alan discovered this before we're ready, he won't. The man couldn't spot a conspiracy. It wore a neon sign. To trusting for his own good. They both laughed at that, laughed at my trust, laughed at the faith I'd placed in family. I forced myself to stay hidden, to keep recording. Every instinct wanted me to burst through that door, to confront them with their betrayal. But I needed more. I needed to know the full extent of their plan. The paperwork's almost ready. Dan continued. I've been consulting with Linda Hawthorne. She's the best divorce attorney in the state. Says with the evidence we've compiled about Alan's controlling behavior. What controlling behavior? Margaret interrupted. The controlling behavior we're going to document every time he questioned a credit card charge. That's financial abuse. Every time he was too tired from work to go to one of your social events. That's emotional neglect. Every time he made a business decision without consulting you. That's dismissive of your role as an equal partner. But Alan's never been controlling. If anything, he's given me too much freedom. Exactly, which is why this is going to work. He won't see it coming. And when it hits, he'll be too shocked to fight back effectively. By the time he figures out what's happening, we'll have frozen half his assets and established you as the victim in the court's eyes. I'd heard enough. Slowly, carefully, I crept back to my car. My hands were steady now, the shock replaced by something colder and more focused. They thought I was a fool. They thought my trust made me weak. They were about to learn differently. I sat in my car for 10 minutes after leaving Dan's house, parked in a strip mall parking lot, trying to process what I'd just heard. My phone sat on the dashboard, the recording app still showing the 43 minutes of evidence that had just shattered my world. 20-5 years. That's how long I'd been married to Margaret. 25 years of building a life together, raising Brianna, creating something I thought was solid and real. Now, I knew it had been a performance for at least the last 2 years, maybe longer. When had she stopped loving me? Or had she ever loved me at all? My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret, working late at the charity foundation tonight. Don't wait up. Love you, love you. The casual lie made my stomach turn. She wasn't at any charity foundation. She was still at Dan's house, planning my financial destruction while betraying our daughter. I drove home to our empty house. My house? Really? I'd built it with my own hands in 1995. The year Brianna was born. Every board, every nail, every carefully planned detail had been a labor of love. A sanctuary for the family I thought I was protecting. The house felt different now. The pictures on the walls seemed to mock me. Our wedding photo from 1987. Margaret radiant in white lace, me looking uncomfortable in my rented tux, but grinning like I'd won the lottery. Brianna's baby pictures, family vacations, 25 years of memories that were now tainted by the knowledge that at least some of them were fake. I went to my home office and sat at the desk I'd made from reclaimed barnwood. This room had always been my sanctuary, where I'd build coal construction from a one-man operation into a company employing 300 people, where I'd spent countless late nights working on bids and proposals, always pushing to grow bigger, to provide more for my family. For Margaret, everything I'd built had been for her and Brianna. Every sacrifice, every missed fishing trip with the guys, every 16-hour day in the blazing heat or freezing cold. All of it had been to give them the life I thought they deserved. I pulled out a legal pad and started writing. If they wanted war, they'd get one, but not the kind they expected. They thought they were dealing with a simple construction worker who got lucky. They had no idea that building a successful business required more than just swinging a hammer. It required strategy, planning, and the ability to think 10 steps ahead. First, I needed to protect my assets, not to keep Margaret from getting her fair share in a divorce. If she'd come to me honestly, I would have made sure she was taken care of. But to prevent her and Dan from stealing what I'd built through deception, I made a list. Call Sarah Chen, my accountant. First thing in the morning, contact Marcus Webb about the offshore accounts, completely legal. For tax purposes, document everything. Margaret had access to review all joint account check credit reports for any unusual activity. Then I stopped. Was I really doing this? Was I really preparing for a war against my own wife? I played the recording again, listening to Margaret mock our marriage, listening to Dan calculate my worth like I was already dead. Yes, I was doing this. The front door opened at 9:47 p.m. Margaret's heels clicked on the marble floor she insisted we needed in the entrance hall. "Alan, you still up?" she called out, her voice carrying full cheer. "In the office," I replied, quickly closing the legal pad and pulling up a construction bid on my computer. She appeared in the doorway, still dressed in the designer outfit she'd worn to Dan's house. Her makeup was fresh, carefully applied. She looked beautiful, the same elegant woman who'd caught my eye at that Christmas party so many years ago. But now I could see the calculation behind her smile. "How was the charity thing?" I asked, proud of how normal my voice sounded. "Oh, boring fundraising talk, but necessary." She walked over and kissed my cheek. Her perfume was different, nor expensive. When had she started wearing that? Don't work till late. Just finishing up the Mitchell proposal. Big project. If we land it, her eyes lit up with interest. Not in the work, I realize now, but in the potential profit. How big? 15 million, maybe 20 if they approve all the additions. That's wonderful. Another cheek kiss, another performance. I'm going to take a bath and head to bed. Early morning tomorrow. Coffee with Linda Hawthorne. Linda Hawthorne? I knew that name. She was a divorce attorney, one of the sharks who specialized in high asset divorces. Margaret was meeting with her tomorrow, probably to start putting their plan in motion. "Sleep well," I said, after she left. I sat in the dark office for a long time. Tomorrow, everything would change. I'd start protecting myself, protecting the business I'd built, protecting the employees who depended on me. But tonight, I mourned the death of the marriage I thought I had. The woman I loved was gone, or maybe she'd never existed at all. The Margaret I'd married was a character, a role played by someone I apparently never really knew. The next morning, I was at Sarah Chen's office when it opened at 8 a.m. Sarah had been my accountant for 12 years, ever since coal construction had grown too big for me to handle the books myself. She was brilliant, discreet, and most importantly, she understood that business was war conducted with spreadsheets instead of weapons. "Alan," she greeted me with surprise. "You're early. Is everything okay?" "I need a complete audit of all my assets," I said, closing her office door behind me. "Everything. Business accounts, personal accounts, investments, properties, and I need to know exactly what Margaret has access to. Sarah studied my face for a moment, then nodded. Divorce. Complicated divorce. She's been planning it for months, maybe years. I just found out yesterday. I'm sorry. She pulled up my files on her computer. How complicated are we talking? She's working with someone to document everything I own. They're planning to claim I've been controlling and abusive to maximize the settlement. Sarah's fingers paused on the keyboard. That doesn't sound like the Allen call I know, because it's not true. But truth and legal strategy aren't always the same thing. We spent the next 3 hours going through everything. The construction business was worth more than even Margaret had calculated, closer to 15 million than 12. The rental properties added another for million. The vacation home, the investments, the equipment and vehicles owned by the company. All told, I was worth about $22 million. Here's the interesting part, Sarah said, pulling up another screen. The business is structured as an LLC with you as the primary owner. But technically, it's a separate entity from your personal assets. If we're smart about this, we can protect the majority of the business from any divorce settlement. How? First, we document that the business was started before your marriage. You founded Cole Construction in 1985, married Margaret in 1987. The foundation of the business is arguably separate property. Second, we can show that the business growth was primarily due to your efforts, not marital contributions. Margaret never worked in the business. I confirmed. Even better. Third, we need to look at the offshore account in the Caymans. I shifted uncomfortably. That's completely legal. You set it up yourself for tax optimization. I know, and it contains what? 3 million, 3.2. That money was earned by the business and transferred before being declared as personal income. Technically, it might not be considered a marital asset, depending on how the divorce is structured. For the first time since yesterday, I felt a glimmer of hope. So what do? We start moving money. Legally, she added quickly, pay off all business debts to reduce the company's paper value. Invest in equipment and property that the business needs anyway. Defer your salary for the next few months. All completely legitimate business decisions that happen to reduce your apparent liquid assets. When do we start? Now. But Alan, she looked at me seriously. This is going to get ugly. If Margaret has been planning this, she's not going to go quietly when she realizes you're protecting yourself. Let her come. I've got something she doesn't know about. I pulled up my phone and showed her the recording app. 43 minutes of her and her accomplice planning everything. Sarah's eyes widened as she listened to a few seconds of the recording. Is that Dan, your son-in-law? Former son-in-law. Once Brianna finds out, this changes everything. This is evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. You need a lawyer, a good one. Know anyone. James Morrison. He handled my brother's divorce. He's expensive, but worth every penny. And he hates lawyers who abuse the system. I left Sarah's office with a plan and an appointment with James Morrison for that afternoon. But first, I had another stop to make. Marcus Webb worked out of a small office downtown, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing, which was exactly how his clients preferred it. Marcus specialized in wealth management for people who value privacy over publicity. Alan, he greeted me warmly. Been a while. I need to talk about the Cayman account. His expression shifted to business mode. Is there a problem? My wife is planning to divorce me and take everything she can. I need to know that money is protected. It is. The account is in the company name, not yours personally. Your wife has no claim to it unless she can prove it's a marital asset, which would be nearly impossible given the corporate structure we set up. Could you move it anyway, just to be safe? Where did you have in mind? Somewhere even safer. Switzerland, maybe. Marcus leaned back in his chair. I can do that. But Alan, moving that much money internationally will create a paper trail. If your wife's lawyer is good, they might be able to track it. Let them track it, as long as they can't touch it. Understood? I'll start the process today. Should take about a week to complete. I stood to leave, then paused. Marcus, in your experience, what's the biggest mistake people make in divorces? They get emotional. They want revenge more than they want resolution. Don't be that person, Alan. Protect yourself. But don't destroy yourself trying to destroy her. Good advice. But as I walked to my car, I couldn't help but think about Margaret's laughter as she called me a fool, about Dan's smugness, as he calculated my worth, about my daughter, who had no idea her husband was sleeping with her mother. Maybe I wouldn't destroy myself seeking revenge, but I sure as hell wasn't going to let them destroy me either. That afternoon, I sat in James Morrison's law office, a tastefully decorated space that screamed success without being ostentatious. James himself was in his 60s, gray haired and sharp eyed, with the kind of presence that commanded respect in courtrooms. Sarah Chen says you have a situation. He began, pouring us both coffee from an expensive looking machine. My wife is planning to divorce me. She's been documenting assets and preparing to claim abuse to maximize her settlement. How do you know this? I pulled up my phone and played the recording. James listened to the entire 43 minutes without interrupting, occasionally taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When it finished, he leaned back in his leather chair and whistled. Softly, that's your son in law, yes. And they're having an affair. It seems that way, Mr. Cole. This recording changes everything. This isn't just a divorce case anymore. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, possible extortion, and definite grounds for a full-based divorce that would significantly reduce any settlement. So, what do I do? First, we file for divorce immediately. Before they do, being the petitioner gives us certain advantages. Second, we use this recording to negotiate. They'll know that if this becomes public, both their reputations are destroyed. Dan could be disbarred for ethics violations. Third, we protect your assets starting right now. He pulled out a thick folder of documents. I'm going to file for a legal separation today. Citing irreconcilable differences, this freezes all marital assets as of today's date. Anything you earn after today is arguably not marital property. What about the money she's already taken? What money? I showed him the credit card statements Sarah had pulled over the last 8 months. Margaret had been slowly siphoning money from our joint accounts. Small amounts at first. 1,000 here, 2,000 there. But it added up to nearly $50,000. Where did it go? I don't know yet. Sarah's tracking it. Find out if she's been stealing marital assets. That's criminal. More leverage for us. We spent the next 2 hours planning strategy. James was thorough, methodical, and ruthless in a professional way that I appreciated. This wasn't personal for him, which made him exactly the right person for the job. One more thing, he said as I prepared to leave, your daughter, she needs to know, not just about the divorce, but about her husband's involvement. If you don't tell her, Margaret and Dan will spin their own version. I know, I'm planning to talk to her tonight. Be careful how you do it. Record the conversation if possible. You want evidence that you informed her truthfully, not maliciously. I left his office feeling more in control than I had since yesterday. But the hardest part was still ahead. How do you tell your daughter that her husband is sleeping with her mother? How do you destroy her world while trying to save your own? That evening, I called Brianna and asked her to meet me for dinner. Just the two of us, I said, father-daughter. Time, she agreed happily, suggesting her favorite Italian place downtown. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, looking at her phone. She looked so much like her mother at that age. The same auburn hair, the same elegant features. But there was something of me in her too. The determined set of her jaw. The way she focused completely on whatever was in front of her. Dad, she stood and hugged me. This is a nice surprise. We haven't done dinner just us in forever. I know, I'm sorry about that. We ordered pasta arrabbiata for her, chicken marsala for me, and made small talk about her psychology practice, about the new house she and Dan were looking at, about everything except what I'd come to say. Finally, as our entrees arrived, I couldn't postpone it anymore. Brianna, I need to tell you something. Something difficult. Her fork paused midway to her mouth. Is everything okay? Are you sick? No, nothing like that. It's about your mother and me. We're getting divorced. The fork clattered to her plate. What? Why? You guys seemed fine at Easter dinner last week. We've been having problems for a while. Your mother, she wants different things than I can give her. Dad, that's so vague. What kind of different things? You guys have been married for 25 years. What changed? I pulled out my phone. I need you to listen to something. It's going to be hard to hear, but you need to know the truth. I played the recording. Not all of it. I couldn't put her through that. But enough. Margaret talking about the divorce plans, then discussing legal strategy. The two of them calculating my assets. Brianna's face went pale, then red, then pale again. When I stopped the recording, she was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. That's Dan's voice, she said unnecessarily. Yes. He's helping Mom divorce you? Yes. And there. Are they? I don't know for certain. But it seems likely. She stood abruptly, knocking over her water glass. The waiter rushed over, but she waved him away. I need to go, Brianna. Wait. No, Dad. I need to. I need to talk to Dan. I need to hear him deny this, or admit it, or I don't know. I just need to go. She left. And I sat there alone with two untouched dinners and the weight of having just destroyed my daughter's marriage along with my own. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of legal maneuvering and emotional chaos. James Morrison filed for legal separation on Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, Margaret was served papers at the country club in front of her entire social circle. James had arranged that deliberately. Public humiliation was a powerful weapon. My phone exploded with calls and texts from Margaret within minutes. How dare you embarrass me like this? We need to talk immediately. This is not how adults handle problems. Alan, you're going to regret this. I didn't respond to any of them. James had advised complete radio silence. Let her panic. Let her wonder what I knew and what I was planning. Dan's reaction was different. He called my office directly, his lawyer voice in full effect. Alan, this is Dan. I understand you filed for separation from Margaret as your son-in-law. I'm concerned about the family dynamics here. Perhaps we could meet and discuss this. Rationally, the audacity of it almost made me laugh. He was trying to position himself as a mediator in the divorce he'd been planning to orchestrate. I didn't return his call either. But the most heartbreaking call came from Brianna on Friday morning. Dad, I confronted Dan about the recording. He admitted to helping Mom with divorce planning, but denied any affair. He says he was just providing legal advice as a family favor. And you believe him. A long pause. I don't know what to believe anymore. Mom called me crying, saying you're trying to destroy her financially. Dan says you're being paranoid and vindictive. I need some time to think. Take all the time you need, sweetheart. I love you no matter what. I love you too, Dad. Meanwhile, Sarah Chen was uncovering the full extent of Margaret's financial deception. The $50,000 I'd initially discovered was just the tip of the iceberg. She opened 3 credit cards in your name without your knowledge, Sarah reported. Friday afternoon, all maxed out. Total debt, $78,000. $78,000 on what? Jewelry, mostly. Designer handbags. A few trips that she told you were with her sister, but were actually, well, the hotel receipts show double occupancy. Dan, most likely, the dates correspond with his business trips. The betrayal kept getting deeper. Every stone we turned over revealed another lie, another deception, another piece of evidence that my marriage had been a sham for years. Saturday morning brought a new development. Tom Bradley from the bank called me personally. Alan, I probably shouldn't be calling you about this, but we've known each other for 15 years. Someone tried to access your business line of credit yesterday. They had your information but couldn't answer the security questions. Margaret, I can't confirm that. But the attempt was made from a computer at Thompson and Associates, Dan's law firm. They were getting desperate, trying to grab whatever money they could before the legal system locked everything down. Thanks for the heads up, Tom. Can you freeze that line of credit? Already done. I've also flagged all your accounts for suspicious activity. Anyone trying to access them will need to show ID and answer additional security questions. Good. Let them scramble. Let them feel what it was like to have the rug pulled out from under them. Saturday evening, I was at home reviewing financial documents when I heard a car in the driveway. Margaret's Lexus. She still had her house key. Of course, I'd have to change the locks. But for now, I was curious what she'd do. She entered like she still owned the place, heels clicking on the marble, designer purse swinging. She found me in the living room, sitting in my leather recliner with a beer. We need to talk, she announced. Do we? Seems like you've been doing plenty of talking with Dan. Her face flushed. That's ridiculous. Dan is our son-in-law. Of course. I talked to him about divorcing me, about taking everything I've worked for, about what a fool I am for trusting you. I don't know what you think you heard. I pulled up my phone and played 10 seconds of the recording. Her voice filled the room. The man actually believes I love him. The color drained from her face. You recorded me. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. State law allows recording if one party is aware. And since the conversation was about defrauding me, I had reasonable cause. She sank onto the couch, the fight suddenly going out of her. How much did you hear? Everything? The whole 43-minute planning session? Alan, it's not what you think, really? Because it sounds like you and Dan have been planning to destroy me financially while having an affair behind Brianna's back. There's no affair. The denial was too quick, too sharp. Dan was just helping me understand my options. You have to understand, Alan. I've been unhappy for years. Then why didn't you just talk to me? Why the elaborate conspiracy? She looked at me then, really looked at me. And for a moment, I saw something honest in her eyes. Because you would have tried to fix it, you would have worked harder, done more, given more. And I didn't want to be fixed. I wanted to be free. Free? You've been free our entire marriage. I never controlled you, never limited you, never questioned anything you wanted to do. Exactly, she stood, pacing now. You never questioned anything. Never engaged, never really saw me. You were so focused on building your business, on being the provider, that you forgot to be a husband. So you decided to steal everything I worked for. I decided to take what I was owed for 25 years of being a construction worker's trophy wife. There it was, the truth. Finally, she saw herself as settling for me, suffering through a marriage to a blue-collar man who got lucky. All those years, I thought we were building something together. She'd seen herself as serving a sentence. Get out, I said quietly. This is my house too. Not anymore. The separation agreement gives me exclusive occupancy pending the divorce. Your things will be packed and sent to wherever you're staying. You can't just throw me out. I can and I am. You have 10 minutes to get whatever you need for tonight. Tomorrow, my lawyer will contact yours about retrieving the rest. She stared at me, maybe saying me clearly for the first time, not the trusting fool she'd manipulated for years, but a man who built an empire from nothing and wasn't about to let anyone, not even her, tear it down. The war escalated quickly over the next week. Margaret, now staying with her sister, hired Linda Hawthorne. Just as the recording had predicted, Linda was known as a barracuda in divorce court, someone who specialized in turning husbands into villains and wives into victims. Their first move was predictable but effective. Margaret gave an interview to the local society blogger, painting herself as a devoted wife blindsided by her husband's paranoid accusations and financial manipulation. She didn't mention the recording, of course, or Dan, or the 78,000 in credit card fraud. The article appeared online Tuesday morning with the headline, Local business owner's wife claims emotional abuse and shocking divorce filing. My phone rang off the hook. Clients wanting to know if there would be impacts to their projects. Employees worried about their jobs. Fellow business owners offering support or fishing for gossip. James Morrison was unfazed. This is actually good for us, he said when I called him in a panic. She's making public statements that we can disprove with evidence. Every lie she tells now is another nail in her coffin. He was right. By noon, we'd issued our own statement. Dry and factual. Mr. Cole has filed for divorce citing irreconcilable differences and financial malfeasance by Mrs. Cole. Evidence of substantial financial fraud has been provided to the appropriate authorities. Mr. Cole's business operations remain unaffected, and all contracts will be fulfilled as agreed. The mention of financial fraud and authorities shifted the narrative. Suddenly, Margaret wasn't just a wronged wife, she was potentially a criminal. Wednesday brought another surprise. Dan had been removed from the Morrison Municipal Center project. Jim Morrison, no relation to James, called me personally. Alan, I want you to know this has nothing to do with your personal situation. Dan Thompson's been billing us for hours that don't add up. And there are some ethical concerns about his handling of the contract negotiations. We're bringing in new counsel. I appreciate you telling me. Jim, there's more. Word is Dan's in financial trouble. Big trouble. He owes money all over town. And his practice is hemorrhaging clients. Whatever's going on with your family situation, I keep an eye on your business interests. Interesting. Dan was drowning financially, which explained his eagerness to help Margaret pillage my assets. A desperate man making desperate moves. I shared this information with Sarah Chen, who did some digging of her own. Dan Thompson is 3 months behind on his office lease. She reported Thursday morning his house is in pre-foreclosure, and he's got almost $200,000 in student loans that he's been deferring for years. The man is broke, but he drives a Porsche. He and Brianna just went to Hawaii for their anniversary, all on credit. He's been living a fantasy lifestyle funded by debt. My guess, he saw your money as his lifeline. This changed things. A financially desperate Dan was dangerous, but also vulnerable. James Morrison saw the opportunity immediately. We offer him a deal, James suggested. He flips on Margaret, admits to the conspiracy, and we don't pursue criminal charges against him. What about Brianna? Your daughter's already figured out her marriage is over. Dan turning state's evidence just speeds up the inevitable. Friday afternoon, James arranged a meeting with Dan at a neutral location, a conference room at the downtown Marriott. I waited in an adjoining room, able to hear everything through the thin wall. Mr. Thompson, James began. I'll be direct. We have evidence of your conspiracy with Margaret Cole to defraud my client. We have the recording. We have the financial documents you helped prepare. And we have witnesses to your meetings. That's circumstantial. Dan started. We also know about your financial situation, the debts, the foreclosure, the ethics complaints with the Bar Association. Silence. Here's what we're offering. James continued. You provide a sworn affidavit detailing Margaret's plan, including any financial crimes she's committed. In exchange, we don't pursue criminal charges against you, and we don't report your involvement to the Bar Association. You're asking me to betray my client. Margaret Cole isn't your client. She's your co-conspirator, and possibly your lover, though that's between you and your wife. There's no affair, Mr. Thompson. Hotel receipts suggest otherwise, but that's not our primary concern. We want the truth about the financial conspiracy. You have 24 hours to decide. Dan left without giving an answer, but I could see him through the window as he sat in his Porsche in the parking lot, head in his hands. The weight of his choices was crushing him. Saturday morning, Brianna called. Dad, Dan moved out last night. He says you threatened to destroy him if he didn't leave me. That's not true, sweetheart. I gave him a choice to come clean about his involvement with your mother's scheme. Leaving you was his decision. His involvement. Dad, he admitted everything. The planning. The asset documentation. Even Even the affair, my heart broke for her. I'm so sorry, baby. Don't be. I needed to know the truth. Mom's been calling, trying to convince me you're the villain here. But Dan admitted she approached him months ago with this plan. She seduced him, Dad. He was weak and stupid and greedy, but she orchestrated all of it. Margaret the puppeteer, pulling everyone's strings. But her puppets were cutting themselves free. By Monday, Dan had agreed to cooperate. His affidavit was devastating, detailing not just the divorce conspiracy, but Margaret's systematic financial fraud going back 3 years. She'd been skimming money, hiding assets, and building her escape fund long before Dan entered the picture. The criminal charges were filed Tuesday afternoon. Margaret was arrested at her sister's house, led away in handcuffs while the neighbors watched. The society blogger who'd written the abuse article had a new headline: Construction mogul's wife arrest, Ed for financial fraud. But even as I watched my revenge unfold, I felt empty. 25 years of marriage reduced to criminal charges and legal briefs, a family destroyed, a daughter's marriage ruined, and for what? Money that I would have shared willingly if she'd just been honest about wanting to leave. The trial was set for September, but Margaret's lawyer pushed for a settlement conference. In July, the criminal charges had destroyed her position. No judge would give a generous divorce settlement to someone who'd committed fraud against their spouse. We met at James Morrison's office on a humid Thursday morning. Margaret looked older. Defeated, the designer clothes had been replaced with a simple business suit. The confident manipulation was gone, replaced by something that might have been genuine remorse, or maybe just regret at getting caught. Linda Hawthorne spoke first. My client is willing to accept a minimal settlement in exchange for dropping the criminal charges. James laughed. The criminal charges are the district attorney's decision now, not ours. Your client committed fraud, multiple counts. She was desperate, Linda argued, trapped in a marriage where she felt invisible and undervalued. So she stole money and conspired to take even more. James shook his head. That's not desperation. That's greed. I watched Margaret throughout this exchange. She wouldn't meet my eyes, staring instead at her manicured nails. A manicure she'd likely paid for with stolen money. What does Mrs. Call actually want? I asked. Speaking for the first time, everyone turned to look at me. Margaret finally raised her eyes to mine. I want this to be over, she said quietly. I want to move on with my life. Then let's make it simple, I said. You get the house in Wisconsin, 50,000 in cash, your car, your jewelry, your personal belongings. In exchange, you waive all claims to the business, the other properties, and spousal support. Linda started to object, but Margaret cut her off. That's fair. There's one condition, I added. You tell Brianna the truth. All of it. She deserves to hear it from you. Margaret's composure cracked. She'll hate me. She already does. But at least she'll have closure. The meeting ended with preliminary agreements. The criminal charges would likely result in probation and restitution rather than jail time, given Margaret's lack of prior record. She'd leave the marriage with enough to start over, but nothing close to the millions she'd planned to take. That afternoon, I met with Sarah Chen to review the financial damage. All told, she took about $300,000 over 3 years. Sarah calculated, you recover some through restitution, but probably not all. It's just money, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. That's very zen of you, not zen, just tired. I spent 40 years building this business. I can make that money back. But I can't get back the time I wasted on someone who never loved me. Brianna filed for divorce from Dan the same week. Unlike her mother, she handled it with dignity and honesty. Dan, drowning in debt and facing bar association hearings, didn't contest it. He left town in August, reportedly moving to Nebraska to stay with family. The meeting between Margaret and Brianna happened in a coffee shop downtown. I wasn't there, but Brianna told me about it later. She cried, Brianna said, actual tears. Admitted she'd been planning the divorce for 2 years. Admitted to the affair with Dan. even admitted that she'd never really loved you the way you loved her. How did that make you feel? Sad? Angry? But mostly just empty. My whole childhood feels like a lie now. Every family vacation, every Christmas morning, every proud moment at school events. Was any of it real? Your childhood was real. I told her firmly, your achievements, your happiness, your growth, that was all real. Margaret might have been performing, but you weren't, and neither was I. September came and went. The divorce was finalized quietly, without the dramatic trial Margaret had probably envisioned. When she'd started planning this, she moved to Minnesota to live near her sister. Last I heard, she was working as a receptionist at a medical clinic. Dan's law license was suspended for 3 years following the Bar Association hearing. The combination of financial impropriety and ethical violations made it impossible for him to practice. He never tried to contact Brianna again, which was probably the only smart decision he made in this whole mess. By October, life had found a new rhythm. The business was thriving. If anything, the drama had generated sympathy that translated into new contracts. My employees, who'd worried about their jobs during the divorce chaos, were now more loyal than ever. I sold the big house. Too many memories, too many rooms for one person. Instead, I bought a modest cabin by the lake, the kind of place I'd dreamed about as a young man before Margaret convinced me we needed marble floors and a circular driveway. Brianna visited every Sunday. We'd fish off the dock, grill whatever we caught, and talk about everything except the past. She was rebuilding too, her psychology practice growing as she channeled her pain into helping others navigate family trauma. I've been thinking about forgiveness, she said one evening as the sun set over the lake. Oh, not for Mom or Dan, but for you. I blamed you for a while, for not seeing it sooner, for being so trusting, for working so much that you missed the signs. I blamed myself too. But that's not fair. You loved honestly. You trusted completely. You worked hard to provide for your family. Those aren't flaws, Dad. Those are strengths. Mom and Dan took advantage of your strengths, but that's on them, not you. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the water turn gold in the fading light. 6 months after the divorce, I stood in front of Cole Construction's annual company meeting. 300 employees and their families filled the hotel ballroom, the same venue where I'd met Margaret at that Christmas party 28 years ago. This has been a challenging year, I began, my voice carrying across the room, not just for the company, but for me personally. Many of you know about my divorce, the legal battles, the attempted theft of everything we've built together. Heads nodded. The construction industry is surprisingly small. Everyone knew everyone else's business, but we're still here, still building, still growing. Because call construction isn't about one person or one family, it's about all of us, every project manager, every foreman, every laborer who shows up before dawn to pour concrete or frame walls. You are the foundation of this company. Applause rippled through the room, which is why I'm announcing something new, effective immediately. Cole Construction is implementing an employee profit sharing program. 10% of annual profits will be distributed among all employees based on years of service. The applause became thunderous. Jim Morrison stood up, starting a standing ovation. These people had stood by me through the worst year of my life. They deserved to share in the success they'd helped create. After the meeting, I was approached by a woman I didn't recognize, mid-40s, professionally dressed, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Mr. Call, I'm Jennifer Matthews. I'm an architect. With Morrison Design, we're working on the hospital expansion project together. Of course, Jim Morrison speaks highly of your work. Thank you. I just wanted to say, what you did tonight, the profit sharing, that's incredibly generous. Not many owners would do that, especially after what you've been through. It's the right thing to do. These people earned it. She hesitated, then said, I also wanted to say I'm sorry about your divorce. I went through something similar 5 years ago. My ex-husband was Well, let's just say I understand betrayal. There was something in her voice, a shared understanding of pain and recovery. We talked for a few more minutes about the hospital project, but there was an undercurrent of something else, not flirtation exactly, but recognition. To people who'd been broken and rebuilt themselves. Would you like to get coffee sometime? She asked to discuss the project. Of course, I'd like that. We met for coffee the following Tuesday. The hospital project discussion lasted about 10 minutes before we found ourselves sharing divorce war stories. Her ex had hidden assets in his brother's name. She discovered he'd been living a complete double life with another family to states away. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, she said, stirring her latte. It was realizing I'd been in love with someone who never existed. The man I married was a character he played. I know exactly what you mean. Margaret performed the role of loving wife for years. Oscar worthy performance. Do you think you'll ever trust anyone again? I considered the question. 6 months ago, I would have said never. But sitting across from this woman who'd experienced similar pain and come through it with grace and humor intact, I wasn't so sure. I think trust is like building a house. I said finally, you start with a strong foundation. You test every board, every nail. You don't rush. And you never build on ground that's already proven unstable. She smiled. That's either very wise or very cautious. Maybe both. We started meeting for coffee regularly, always professional, always about the project, until one day it wasn't. I have a confession. Jennifer said one afternoon in November. I haven't needed to discuss the hospital project for weeks. I just like talking to you. I have a confession, too. I know we both left, and something shifted. Not love, not yet, but possibility. Thanksgiving brought unexpected peace. Brianna and I cooked together in my cabin, just the two of us. No elaborate spread like Margaret used to orchestrate. Just turkey, stuffing, and pie. Simple, honest, real. I invited someone to join us, Brianna said as we were setting the table. I hope that's okay. Of course. Who? His name is Michael. He's a pediatrician at the hospital where I have privileges. We've been dating for 2 months. I studied my daughter's face, seeing something I hadn't seen in over a year. Hope. I want to meet him properly before he comes. Make sure he understands that if he hurts you, I know how to operate a backhoe and where there's soft ground. She left. Dad, you're not intimidating. You're a teddy bear. I can be intimidating when necessary. Michael arrived bearing wine and flowers, nervous, but genuine. He was nothing like Dan, quieter, more thoughtful, with calloused hands from volunteer construction work with Habitat for Humanity. When he talked about pediatric medicine, his face lit up with genuine passion. Brianna tells me you built your company from nothing, he said over dinner. That's incredible. Just hard work and stubbornness. What made you choose pediatrics? Kids are honest. They don't pretend to be sick or well, they just are what they are. After growing up with parents who lied about everything, I found that refreshing. Another child of divorce, another survivor of betrayal. Maybe that's what Brianna needed. Someone who understood that love required truth as much as passion. December brought unexpected communications. First, a letter from Margaret, forwarded through her lawyer. Alan, I know I have no right to contact you, but I needed to say some things before I can move forward. I was wrong, not just about the divorce, conspiracy, or the money, but about everything. I spent so many years convincing myself I was unhappy that I forgot what happiness actually looked like. I had it with you, and I threw it away for a fantasy that never materialized. Dan was a mistake. The plans were mistakes. The lies were mistakes. But the biggest mistake was not recognizing what I had until it was gone. You gave me 25 years of security, comfort, and genuine love. I gave you performance and betrayal. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I lost. I hope you find someone who loves you the way you loved me. someone who deserves the life you can provide. Margaret, I read it 3 times, then filed it away. Too little, too late. But at least she'd found some clarity in her loss. The second communication was more surprising. Dan Thompson reached out through a mutual acquaintance, requesting a meeting. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town. Dan looked terrible, thin, hollow-eyed, wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit properly. The confident lawyer was gone, replaced by someone who'd been humbled by consequences. Thank you for meeting me, he began. What do you want? Dan, to apologize. And to warn me. He pulled out a folder. Margaret contacted me last month. She's considering challenging the divorce settlement, claiming she signed under duress. She's found a new lawyer in Minnesota who thinks she has a case. Why are you telling me this? Because I owe you that much. And because he paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I need to make things right. I destroyed my marriage, my career, my life. I can't fix that. But I can try to prevent more damage. What do you want in exchange? Nothing. This isn't a transaction. It's penance, I guess. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand why I did what I did. The greed, the affair, the betrayal of the only real family I ever had. I studied him across the table. This broken man had tried to destroy me, had betrayed his wife, had conspired to steal millions. But sitting here, he looked more pitiful than villainous. The folder contains emails between Margaret and this new lawyer. Dan continued. She's claiming emotional abuse, financial manipulation, that she was tricked into accepting our unfair settlement. It's all lies. But this lawyer thinks he can make something stick. Why would you help me? Because Brianna doesn't deserve to go through this again. She's already lost both parents in different ways. If Margaret drags this out, it'll hurt Brianna more than anyone. He was right about that. I took the folder. Dan, let me ask you something. Did you ever love my daughter? His face crumpled. Yes, God, yes. Brianna was the best thing that ever happened to me. But I wanted the life I thought your money could provide more than I wanted her. By the time I realized my mistake, it was too late. It's never too late to become a better person. Maybe. But it's too late to undo the damage. He left shortly after, and I never saw him again. I heard later he'd moved to Iowa, working as a paralegal while rebuilding his life. Maybe he'd find redemption, maybe not. But it was no longer my concern. James Morrison made quick work of Margaret's new challenge. The emails Dan had provided showed her new lawyer was operating on false information Margaret had provided when presented with the recording and evidence of fraud. He dropped the case immediately. Christmas Eve found my cabin full of warmth and laughter. Brianna and Michael were there, along with Jennifer and her teenage daughter Emma. We'd been dating officially for a month, taking things slowly, building that foundation carefully. This is nice, Jennifer said, standing beside me as we watched the others decorating the tree. Real, no performance. I agreed. No pretense, just people being themselves. Is that enough for you? After the big house and the country club life? It's everything. Emma and Brianna were laughing about something. Michael was trying to entangle lights, and snow was falling softly outside the windows. This was what I'd always wanted. Not the marble floors or the social status, but genuine connection with people who showed up as themselves. I love you, Jennifer said quietly. The first time either of us had said it, I love you too. It was different from the desperate passion I'd felt for Margaret in my youth. This was quieter, built on understanding and shared experience rather than fantasy and projection. We both knew what betrayal felt like, what rebuilding required, what real love cost. I stood at the construction site of the new children's hospital wing, watching my crews pour the foundation. 5 years had passed since that April afternoon when I discovered Margaret's betrayal. 5 years of rebuilding. Not just my life, but my understanding of what mattered. Cole Construction had grown to 500 employees. The profit-sharing program had created a loyalty and dedication that no amount of money could have bought. we'd become the premier construction company in 3 states, known for quality and integrity. You ready for this? Jennifer asked, slipping her hand into mine. She wore a simple white dress, nothing elaborate. We decided to get married at the job site, surrounded by the people who'd stood by us through everything. I've been ready for 2 years, I said. You're the one who wanted to wait. I wanted to be sure we were building something solid, not just rebounding from our divorces. And foundations perfect, ready to build. The ceremony was simple. Brianna stood as my best woman, 7 months pregnant with her first child. Michael beamed beside her, having proven himself worthy of my daughter's trust over the years. Jim Morrison officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for this occasion. Do you, Alan, take Jennifer to be your wife, to build a life together on a foundation of truth, trust, and genuine love? I do. Do you, Jennifer, take Alan to be your husband, to construct a future based on honest communication and mutual respect? I absolutely do, as we kissed, surrounded by applause from construction workers and friends. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had ultimately led to something better. A life built on truth rather than performance. Margaret had remarried a year ago to someone she'd met in Minnesota. I hoped she'd found happiness, or at least peace. The anger had long since faded, replaced by a kind of distant pity. She'd spent so many years performing that I wondered if she even knew who she really was. Dan had reached out once more. A letter congratulating Brienne on her pregnancy and expressing regret for missing out on being part of her life. She'd thrown it away unread, but I'd retrieved it, reading his words of remorse and self-reflection. He was in therapy, in recovery from gambling addiction that had driven his financial desperation, trying to become someone worthy of the second chance life had given him. Hey, Jennifer said, pulling me from my thoughts. Where'd you go? Just thinking about how different this is from my first wedding. The huge production Margaret orchestrated, hundreds of guests we barely knew, all that performance. And now I have exactly what I always wanted: a real partner, a real family, a real life. The reception was held in the construction company warehouse, decorated with simple lights and filled with the laughter of people who genuinely cared about us. No society photographers, no gossip bloggers, no one performing for an audience. Dad, Brianna said, finding me during a quiet moment. I'm proud of you. For what? For surviving, for not becoming bitter, for showing me that betrayal doesn't have to define your future. You did the same thing, sweetheart. I learned from the best. She rubbed her pregnant belly. This little guy is going to grow up seeing what real love looks like, what real partnership means. That's the gift you and Jennifer are giving him. As the evening wound down, I stood outside the warehouse, looking at the stars. 5 years ago, I'd thought my life was over. Margaret and Dan had conspired to take everything I'd built, to destroy the future I'd planned. Instead, their betrayal had freed me to build something better, something real. You coming back in? Jennifer called. They're about to play our song. Our song was Build Me Up Buttercup, which had been playing in the coffee shop during one of our early nut dates. It was ridiculous and perfect and genuinely us. I'll be right there. I took one last look at the stars, then went inside to dance with my wife, surrounded by our real family and our real life, built on the unshakable foundation of truth. The Altful had gotten the last laugh after all. Moral of the story: sometimes the greatest betrayals lead to the greatest freedoms. When someone shows you who they really are through their actions, believe them. Trust, once broken, can never be fully restored with that person, but it can be rebuilt with someone new who proves themselves worthy through consistent honesty and genuine care. The foundation of any relationship, whether marriage, family, or business, must be built on truth. Lies and deception might seem to work in the short term, but they always crumble eventually, taking everyone down with them. Asterisk, and perhaps most importantly, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. When we can look at those who betrayed us without anger or desire for revenge, when we can wish them well,